Hi, my favorite second graders. Back again for our second book. It's another simple biography. This one's called Celia Cruz, Queen of Salsa. And a couple things I want to talk about before I read the story. Our big question for this text set is, why do we read simple biographies? And three things biographies tell us about real people and how these people made a difference in our world. Biographies make us think about ourselves, and biographies give information about different time periods and cultures. So the last one you listened to yesterday was Zora Hurston and the China Bear Tree, and this was set in a place long ago with an African heritage. Our book that we're listening to today is Celia Cruz, and Celia Cruz was born poor in Havana, Cuba. Stood out because of her exceptional singing voice. Through hard work and practice, she went on to become known and loved worldwide as the Queen of Salsa. I looked through this book before I started, and the illustrations are great. I'm sure you're going to like them. Very colorful. So, Celia Cruz, Queen of Salsa. In the fabled land of Havana, where rhythm grows sweet and juicy like oranges in Florida, there lived a girl. She looked like a girl and talked like a girl, but everyone who ever met her agreed she sang like a bird. When Celia Cruz was a girl growing up in Cuba, she could never hear the magic others claimed was in her voice. When she opened up her mouth to sing, she heard a girl like any other, but when she sang, her father heard thunder. Her cousins heard the call of the sea. Her neighbors heard a hummingbird. Cecilia would grow up to be a queen, but she was not born a princess. She grew up poor in a section of town, one of four sisters, though the house was always home to numerous cousins. At times, there were as many as 14 children in one two-bedroom house. Still, young Cecile always stood out amongst the crowd. Her mother liked to tell her stories of how tourists bought Cecile's first pair of shoes after hearing the little girl sing. So just listening to that, I've just learned a lot about Cecilia and who she was and how people thought about her. And you can tell already that she's a very special person in all these people's lives, and a big family, 14 kids. Wow. Lots of kids in one house. Like other girls in Havana, she had chores. Some of her friends were charged with sweeping the kitchen. Other girls washed the dinner plates. Cecilia's job was to sing lullabies to put her younger brothers and sisters to sleep. At night, her voice carried through the windows, rolling along the cobblestone streets like a wheel on a wish. The people in her neighborhood began to gather outside of her family's front door, begging her father to leave it open, they said. Her voice is tendulous, sweet like a zerkar, some words I'm not sure about. Her voice, it was said, sent you not only to sleep, but to a nighttime land of angel dreams. Always shy and more than a little independent, Cecilia mistook the gathering crowds for busybodies, watching her every move. Ah, por favor, she pleaded. If you don't leave, these little ones will never get to sleep. Despite her initial shyness, she could not stop singing. In the afternoon, after school, she would listen to the rapid-fire calls of the cries of pregón, the street vendors calling out their wares. In time, people could recognize the passion and pulsating cries of the pregón on Cecilia's unique vocal style. In high school, she began singing in school shows and local clubs. The music that she loved, El Son and El Guaracha, Cha blended traditional Afro-Cuban rhythms with the flavor and folktale of the tropics. It was the kind of music that sizzled from the joy of being alive. Her father loved to watch his little songbird, watch her send 100 hearts soaring with her melodies. But he was also cautious. Keep studying, mija, he told her as she hummed old Cuban love songs while absent-mindedly flipping the pages of her school books. You are so smart. Forget about singing, become a school teacher, and make your family proud. So her father tells her to be cautious, and that's just to be careful. He may not think that she could be a singer to support herself. Maybe being a school teacher in Cuba is a sign of being respected, and that would make her family proud of her to become a school teacher. So we're learning a lot about the culture right now too while we're listening. Her teachers, however, saw things a different way. Take a chance, one professor told her. With your voice, you could earn in a day what it takes me a year to make. But it is not easy to take a dream planted in your heart and make it grow in the world. Cecilia was unknown and did not have the kind of connections that easily open doors. Still, she jumped at every opportunity. Talent contests at the National Theater and amateur nights on the radio. She never forgot her father's lessons on the importance of education. And after graduating high school, she enrolled in Cuba's National Music Conservatory, where she studied piano, voice, and musical theory. Then, in 1950, she got her big shot. The most popular band of the day was called La Señora Macharacha. I'm not sure. And they were auditioning for a new lead singer. When they heard Cecilia sing the way she made each and every note swing, they decided to give the little songbird a job. At first, La Señora's public was outraged. Who was this no-name singer fronting their favorite band? The phones at the Havana radio station rang off the hook with complaints. At home, Cecilia began to wonder if she shouldn't take her father's advice and teach school. Was she really the ruin of Cuba's most beloved band? She stood by the window looking out at the stars. She feared she would never join, and Cecilia asked herself, why do I sing? Is it for fame and fortune and for fans that do not exist? No, she told herself. I sing for my parents, the ancestors, and the saints. I sing because when I lift my voice up high, I feel like the first pajero of the day, whistling Buenos Dias to anyone who will listen. I sing for my little brothers and sisters and the sweet expressions on their faces when they finally fall asleep. Although Cecilia was seriously thinking about giving up her dream, her bandmates refused to allow her to quit. As a group, they rewrote the history of Cuban music with new arrangements and fresh, innovative style. By the time she left Cuba in 1960, Cecilia was as beloved throughout the country as the men who made music with her. She'd even earned an affectionate nickname from her thousands of fans. They called the group Café con leche, coffee with milk. Because Cecilia's skin was very dark, her bandmates were very fair. In the United States, she became a citizen, and her talent was rewarded with a permanent contract at the Hollywood Palladium. But once she left Cuba, politics dictated what she could never return. She would never again walk the streets of her beloved Havana. She would never again hear the cries of the pregón that were the bass and treble of Cuban street life. It was a heartache she carried her whole life through. So what it says here is this was a sad and difficult time in Cuba. A new leader took over the Cuban government, and many people left the country, including Cecilia. How would you feel if you could never go back to the country where you grew up? So a heartache means like you're sad. So how would you feel if you couldn't go back to where you were born and where you grew up? That's what Cecilia had to go through. Still, she kept her heart open. Lost loves made room for new loves. And it was there in Hollywood, that factory town of movies and dreams, that the young princess of salsa music fell in love with a knight in shining armor. His name was really Knight, Pedro Knight. He was the lead trumpet player of the Palladium Orchestra. And while he dazzled her with his high notes, he won her love with his understanding. She told him that her heart would always be split in three pieces, and only one part would belong to him. One part of her heart belonged to the music, and the third piece would always live in Cuba. Cecilia knew that she had met more than her husband. She had met an angel who would be her companion, protector in this land, so far from home. Celia Cruz brought salsa music to every corner of the earth, from London to the Congo, from Brazil to Japan. She recorded over 20 golden albums, and is known the world over as the Queen of Salsa. For more than 40 years, Pedro Knight was her king. Cecilia's performance trademark was a full-throated shout of azúcar. It's a Spanish word for sugar, and the only word many say that so perfectly described her voice. In the fabled land of Havana, where rhythm grows sweet and juicy like oranges in Florida, there lived a girl. She looked like a girl and talked like a girl, but everyone who ever met her agreed she sang like a bird. The bird grew into a princess, and the princess became a much beloved queen. Her kingdom was music, and those who loved her called her not by the name, but by the joy she inspired. At concerts, they called out Aziracar, and Celia Cruz never failed them. She sung Sugar Sweet Sugar wherever she went. And that's the end of that story. Pretty illustrations in this book. I really like the illustrations. After reading the story, it makes me want to go and look her up and see what her music sounds like. That's pretty exciting. Today's focus question will be at the bottom, so go ahead and look at that. Answer that question. Today, maybe this would be a good day to work on your own timeline. This was a good example of a timeline. It went through year by year and how it progressed from when she was a little girl to an adult. So this would be a good time to do your timeline. If you remember, it looks like this. And that's it for today. Have a good day, you guys. Everyone's working very hard too. I'm so proud of you. Keep it up.